Well, hello and welcome to a special video with Tom Price of our City Institute. I'm John Lindsay from CARP. I'm chair of the CARP group and representing a number of, well, quite a few citizens of I guess, I don't use that term advanced age that often, but I guess it's fairly safe, isn't it?
It is these days.
Generically, right?
Just don't use the word old.
Well, we're finishing off 2024, and we thought we'd do this video to sort of do a little recap and look ahead, maybe a bit of a wish list for 2025. We just lost Jimmy Carter.
Yes.
100 years of age, and probably one of the best presidents the US of A ever had. And looking back at 2024, we lost two of our most esteemed citizens in the form of two counselors, Michael Bagnini and Jerry Montpelier. What made these two individuals different and so respected and even loved, really?
Well, to answer that, it sounds like I'm criticizing the other counselors, but I'm not. I'm just stating the attributes of the two. They were people. Their first concern in their entire time in council was the people in their constituencies. First, foremost, and always. And that being the rare thing that it is in today's world, it made them stand out. As well, they both had life experiences that prepared them adequately for their jobs. Again, something that, yes, young people have a lot to offer, but you need a blend of that with the older people and the elders to give you the life experiences of having tried those things before and whether they failed or succeeded. These two had those life experiences.
They were both very successful in their own right.
Absolutely.
As business people, and then very much involved in their communities as well. Now they went out and they canvassed the same as anyone who wants to be on council. And they, well, I think they both got acclaimed the second time around.
Yes, they did.
which is certainly a statement to their popularity. But they often ran into what you might call obstacles or opposition or neglect or abandonment when it came
resistance
to resistance when it came.
Yeah.
So why was that? Is it because the others weren't doing the same thing, representing the people? When you hear them around the council table, they all say, well, I'm representing my constituents. But in many cases, it doesn't appear like that was the case.
Well, in many cases, it isn't the case. To represent your constituents, you have to be in touch with them. Not just the ones that agree with you, but everybody in the community. Those two gentlemen, they would take the heat along with the praise and adjust their thinking to accommodate solving the heat. In contrast, a lot of the counselors prefer not to take the phone calls if it's complaints. And it's reached the point now where you can't even contact some of the counselors. They don't answer the phone, and that's partially due to our phone systems today, where they take a message, and if they don't feel like calling you back, they don't.
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
I've often heard it said that you can learn more from criticism than you can from praise. Why is that?
Absolutely, because criticism allows you to improve what you're doing. Praise just says, oh, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Now, we've been accused of being grumpy old men because we're men. But we do have a few, well, we say those of the other sex that are grumpy as well, too. And we hear about them in the paper. They write letters, they comment. And it seems like a lot of this goes unheeded.
Oh, absolutely. We've reached a stage in our society where aged people are disposable.
Ageism is called in some cases.
Is it ageism? Yeah. Okay, well, ageism then is disposable. You're going to die anyway, so why should we listen to you? That voids all the experience that went into building who the individuals are. And that's something they really can't afford to void. Bad experiences and knowing about those bad experiences and correcting so they don't occur again is a very valuable asset. certainly speeding and getting caught and fined heavily teaches you not to do it twice. But if you're just praised all the time, oh, my car goes faster than your car. Well, you know what happens.
Yeah. Before we go any further, we want to commend you and the organizers of the No One Eats Alone Christmas dinner held at the former Northbury, which is now a Days Inn, I believe.
Yes, it is.
You
Yes.
had how many come out to that?
We had about 220 to 230 clients.
And volunteers, of course.
Volunteers, we had over 30 volunteers, and we also supplied meals for 40 on-duty police officers in the city who wouldn't be home with their families. So it was around 300.
Now, I understand that really this was done at almost no cost to those individuals who came out for the dinner.
We were surprised this year. We've never had trouble raising funds. Many people come to us and want to sponsor, they want to donate. They just think it's a good idea, and it is. But this year we had a sponsor come forward and, provided that he remained anonymous, offered to pay for all the meals.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, we want to thank that anonymous person,
Absolutely.
whoever they may be.
And it tells you a lot about our community. It says that, hey, people out there do care about their fellow people and are willing to do things to make it a good community.
Well, speaking about caring for our fellow people, we have a homeless crisis, not only here in Sudbury, of course, but across the country. But it appears that we have, I guess the expression is, too many cooks who are really trying to look after this problem in Sudbury, and really it's not working. We still have people dying, not only from opioid overdose, but that includes a number of the homeless as well too, but also those who are out in encampments who can't get into the warming centers because we don't have enough space. And there are communities that are doing better, like Peterborough is an example, who are actually embarking on a centralized plan where they can have centralized services, and they've even constructed some little tiny homes. I understand that is spreading across the country. That's becoming a very popular way of, because if a person has a home, regardless of how small it might be, if they're located close to services, then you might be able to improve their situation.
Absolutely. More important than having the house is being able to afford the house that you're in, or the home that you're in. And this gets back to, we fail to, well, maybe I should start it differently. I've been in project management most of my career. And the first issue on project management is, if there's a problem that needs to be solved, go to the root cause of the problem and solve it at that level. Don't solve the symptoms. For example, if your car is running roughly, do you just put new spark plugs in, or do you find out why? Or if your tires are wearing unusually fast, do you just put new tires on, or do you find out why and maybe get an alignment job? You go to the root cause and solve it at that level. I've seen very little in dealing with the homeless where people are actually looking for the root cause of why they're out there homeless.
And you can't do that until you actually work with them and determine the situation, and then try to evolve from there. I noticed that just today I was looking at the news feed from CBC, and Brandon, Manitoba is constructing some smaller homes. They're about 600 square feet.
Yeah.
And I was in Brandon a number of years ago, and they have actually a mobile home community there. Very well looked after, very reasonable. You're talking about these homes are being built not for less than around $120,000, $150,000.
Yep.
And the people are living in them. These may be called starter homes in a sense, because they can move up from there. But these are there are solutions available.
Oh, absolutely. And in the 70s, we had those starter homes being built. They were built, yes, they were low cost, yes, they weren't of the quality, they didn't have the high ceilings, they didn't have the fancy entranceway and all that, but there were things that the people at that income level could afford, and it was something where they could call home. And that makes a huge difference.
So what we're looking at here if I can use the word priority, if a city council was being realistic, would they not look at what is our current situation? Where are the problem areas, and really what can we afford? Is that a logical way of looking at it?
Yes, it is, but I guess I would compare it to what happened on Christmas Day at the No One Eats Alone. And as I told you, there was about over 200 people there.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those people know who I am and what I do. And several times during the evening I got asked the question, when is our city management going to stop pushing their special interest projects and start managing the whole city? Now, the people at that celebration or that supper knew where the problem lies. You can't just push special interest projects. You have to look after the entire city. We haven't been doing that. You've seen letters in the paper continuously from people in the outlying areas complaining that they never see city services.
That's true.
And they don't.
Well,
So
the Institute, which is our town, our towns, our city, because before amalgamation we actually had two cities.
yes,
There's the city of Sudbury itself and Valley East, which had a population of 25,000 people,
yes,
which in many cities across Canada, that would be a fair-sized city.
yep.
And but then we had amalgamation, and many people say that's when the trouble started. Would you agree with that?
Well, it did start then, but it wasn't the amalgamation that caused the problem. What caused the problem is, during the amalgamation, we replaced unit managers with administrators.
What's the difference?
Well, the administrator goes by a book and he administers whatever's in the book to everybody in the city. We can't do that in a city like Sudbury. You have to manage each community according to its needs. For example, Labatt.
Wait a minute, wasn't that the way it was before?
Well, yeah. And those individual communities managed very well, and they actually accumulated surpluses. Occasionally they'd had to borrow, but most of the time they accumulated surpluses before they built new facilities.
Well, most of it we can realize what happened or how it happened with respect to the amalgamation. Regional municipality disappeared and the amalgamation came in. And a lot of us had great hopes. We thought this is going to be a streamlined administration. You know, we're going to actually save money. It's going to benefit everyone. That didn't quite work out.
No, and it wouldn't without the individual area managers. For example, what company do you know of that would put an accountant in charge of a mining operation, not even reporting to a manager who knows how to run the operation? And you wouldn't find any. It's that simple. You need someone who knows how to manage the resources and the facilities beneath him.
Now we know that it's good to be optimistic rather than
Oh,
pessimistic.
always.
But we know our new mayor, when he got elected, said his goal was a population increase going up to around 200,000. And if you look at it, you've been involved, you know, you were with International Nickel Company of Canada, INCO, and you've worked around the world. You've seen different operations in the resource sector. You've had a sort of your finger on the pulse of the community and other communities. What do you really think our situation is in Sudbury? What should we really be looking at? Should we have this optimistic goal of 200,000 people, or should we look at what we have and how we can manage it? I'm sort of at a loss here.
A population goal isn't important. It's the value of living in that population that's important. The mining industry has forever suffered booms and busts. Okay, you go through a boom and it reaches the point where you're oversupplying your product, and then there's a downturn. And you have to go through that because production will always outstrip demand, or it should, or else you drive prices through the roof. In recent years, our governments, not wanting to be responsible for recessions and busts, have tried to feather those by promoting commercialism. Buy for the sake of buying. And you saw it in the automotive industry. When the automotive industry didn't adjust their production to suit the demand, they had to lay off, and some of them were in dire straits, so the government moved in and gave them money to make cheaper cars so people would buy more cars.
But that can't happen in the resource industry, can it?
Well, the cheaper cars mean that you have to have cheaper resources.
Okay.
Okay? Now, what did they do there? Well, now we're actually, well, take the cars as a good example. Electric batteries. Batteries for electric cars. Our provincial government now is financing to the tune of, what, $30 billion?
That's right.
A battery plant. When did the taxpayer get responsible for financing the production of goods that they're going to buy? And that's just the wrong way to go. If there's a market for those products, private industry will find a way to build it.
So that's a sort of a global type of thing, but you know, we look at Sudbury, and considering we know in the mining industry we have maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people, we have a considerable number in municipal government, 3,000, something like that. We have health services somewhere in the same area, education as well too. So, and we have, of course, retail and the service industries as well too. But the mining is not the key that it once was, but it would still have quite an impact if it was to be reduced to the workforce and the actual extraction itself. What effect would that have if that sort of disappeared?
Well, we're about to find out.
Oh, how so?
Well, the mining industry, maybe go back a bit to marketing versus, when you saturate your market, your demand goes down.
Mm-hmm.
You can't avoid it.
Right.
Okay? So in our thrust to do environmentally good things, we have concentrated for the last 30, 40 years on getting into recycling. And so now we have enough product of many of these items, ores, minerals, that if you recycle them, you can satisfy our shrinking population. So
The workforce population.
yes. Well, the whole population. So why do you need new ore or new metals from them? The market is saturated. You take the recycled material back, reprocess it, and you put it back in the market. You got fewer customers, so you know you can do that. Why would you keep on mining? So
Well,
mining.
these forces are beyond our control, basically.
Oh yeah, the local governments have no control over that whatsoever. It's mostly dependent on the demographics of the country and of the world. The demographics in Sudbury says that we're right now headed into a shortage of customers for the products we produce here.
Well, our demographics show that we have, I think it's something in the neighborhood of 40,000 people over the age of 65.
Mm-hmm.
Half our population is over the age of 50.
Yep.
If you project this forward, you'd have to bring in a whole lot of new people to make up for those of us who are not going to be here forever.
Right.
So that presents an interesting paradox for those we've elected to represent us. They should be looking at that situation.
Well, they have to realize it first. For example, how many people over 50 are still going to be big consumers?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be consuming for their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
They've got all the attributes and all the benefits they want in their homes. They've got all the clothing they need. They don't eat as much anymore. So that demographic, the over 50s, aren't going to be your market.
Mm-hmm.
So who is your market? Well, young people under 16 are less than the older people over 50.
Mm-hmm. They're not buying.
And they can't buy because they don't make enough money to afford the goods.
Right.
So it's that in-between crowd that is your market. Okay?
But that's not a large market, or that's not a large group.
It's a shrinking market. And that's where the key lies. It is shrinking. Because, and this goes back to the early 1960s, some scientist invented the birth control pill. With the birth control pill, family planning began. The old 2.3 to 3 children per fertile woman.
It's down to 1.3 now.
It's down to 1.3. How do you sustain your population? You can't.
Let's just switch just for a moment here. Two of my sons last night went to the Sudbury Arena or yesterday afternoon for an afternoon game. They thought the game was great. They thought the Wolves did a good job even though they lost. But they were impressed. They haven't been to the arena for quite some time, but they were impressed with the arena, thinking it's a great venue. But that's not the view shared by those who would want to replace it.
No, but they're in good company because the NHL players thought it was a great arena too.
Yeah, right. So why the big push? Why the need for making it 5,800 seats? Why the need for, well, I call them dreamers and schemers, because everyone likes to dream big, right? But who's scheming this? Who benefits from building a new arena, maybe a convention center, all this revitalization of the downtown? And this isn't even part of the downtown exactly.
A few developers, a few construction company management, but beyond that, certainly the public does not. We get burdened with a cost for the next 30 years that is unbearable,
Well,
because we already have those facilities.
that's right. We're talking about could be over $500 million.
Yes, it
And
will
then
be.
Yeah, and then you figure in, of course, our new culture center, which is receiving less enthusiasm. And I know our membership, we've surveyed our membership. People say we're just a bunch of grouchy old people. We actually survey our membership, we do focus groups, and almost unanimously affection for our current Mackenzie Street Library, where you can drive in, you can park, it's got all the amenities. It compares favorably with our other two central libraries in the South End and also in New Sudbury. And we have 13 libraries altogether in Sudbury.
Yes, we do.
So it makes you wonder, how did this come about? We know the council approved by majority vote. They approved both the new arena and the culture hub without any dissent, virtually. Now, there has been concern expressed with respect to accessibility.
Well,
And it seems to all we can get from those who are doing the design work is, well, we're studying that, or it's going to work, and the new library is going to be a knowledge center rather than an information center. All these buzzwords are thrown out there to try to convince us that this is a good thing, but it seems like a lot of so-called ordinary citizens are saying, wait a minute, why are we doing this when we already have adequate and we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars?
well, part of it goes back to your statement about the majority of councillors. You have to realize that the majority of councillors represent the minority of the voters,
How so?
because they didn't get 50% of the vote.
Right. But this happens in a democracy all the time.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
but typically you would expect to get people who understand that they only represent the minority unless they go out of their way to represent the majority. They no longer go out of their way to do that today. Politicians go on the basis, first past the post wins, therefore we must know.
Well, in our minute or so remaining, what advice would we give? I'm not suggesting resolutions for our council, but perhaps, maybe they should rethinking, relooking. I think you've used the term sober second thoughts.
I certainly have. And
Was that enough to change the direction? We feel that somehow they are, and I use that term dreaming again, because in a sense, we all like to dream for newer and better things, but we have to be realistic as well. So is the key being more realistic?
absolutely. Or not even being more realistic, being realistic. Because a lot of this isn't, and that's why I emphasize sober second thought is grossly missing in our municipality and many municipalities across Ontario and Canada. Sober second thought cannot be overvalued. It is a critical portion of any governance.
Now, we don't want to disparage a lot of our city employees who are good workers.
Yes, they are.
And the councillors are good people. It seems like, in a sense, they may have lost contact somehow.
Yes.
Now, we could go on and talk about other things. We can talk about, of course, the old hospital, which we would like to see, I'm talking about the CARP group, has suggested that they swap some other land for that particular old hospital site and, save Bell Park a little bit. I appeared before the planning committee and said, we only have one Bell Park, we only have one Lake Ramsey, we gotta consider what the future means for that. So those things, of course, we've talked about, and we're not sure who's listening,
No, we're not.
but we're likely to continue in 2025 to keep voicing our opinion and hoping that we can get responsible response. Is that a term, responsible response?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay. Any final thoughts, Mr. Price?
No, except we have a new year ahead of us. We have every reason to be optimistic. However, my optimism is tempered by the activity of the masses. If you do not get involved, there's an old saying that bad things happen when good people do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there and do something. Make a difference. And your vote does make a difference. When 42% of the voters vote, and only a small portion of those actually result in somebody being elected, you have a majority of minority ruling the city. That cannot be good. So get out, do your job. We have 1.5 to 2 years to do something different at the next election. Start working now towards making it better.
That's right, it's your choice. Make your voice heard. We know that people have busy lives, but just taking the time to contact your counselor, expressing your concerns, and we hope that 2025 may be a game changer.
Hopefully.
Once again, Happy New Year. Thanks for viewing.
Happy New Year.